Sauce.
Hey, you like Pez?
It looks like that. Here's Heaney from the boundary line. He's an expert at these. From the boundary line!
Hello and welcome to Behind the Boundary podcast. I'm your host Pez. I'm here with Sauce and we are here for Behind the Boundaries Round 2 recap show where we go through all the games for Round 2. Big things have happened, Sauce, over the AFL this week.
Yeah, welcome guys. So many questions already about this short season. We've got teams that are meant to be 2-0 and they're 0-2. We've had teams that are meant to be 0-2 and they're 2-0. We've had the same old umpiring sort of blunders that we have every single year. We've had the bump has been on question, very, very scrutinised over the last couple of weeks. Tribunals had a busy week. So much to talk about, Pez. I can't wait to get into it.
Yep, we've got new rules. We've got all these things going on. And as always, Pez and Sauce have some very big opinions about these games. And we'll see how we went over Round 2. Do you want to get straight into it?
I do want to get straight into it, but before we start, Pez, I did notice that you skated across something that we had in our pre-production meeting. The first thing that we were going to talk about was our Behind the Boundary exclusive competition, the loser competition, for those who are new to the show. It's where you pick one loser each week, and it's a knockout sort of style thing. Everyone gets a life. Easy, Pez, isn't it?
Yes.
And that's what everyone says to us. You know, hey, there's 18 teams. There's 18. There's 22 rounds. What happens if I get all the way through? If you tip like Pez, you'll go out in straight steps. Pez, this is an absolute poor performance from you. Someone who's meant to know a little bit about AFL.
Strategic performance.
Strategic out.
Yep, because as one of the hosts of the show, you don't want to really win your own competition, mate.
Pez.
And just out in straight sets, nice and easy. How good's that? I actually messaged my mate after losing my first life to Sydney on the Thursday before Round 2. I said, he goes, who to pick, mate? And I said, anyone that I don't pick can never go deep in this comp. And then he just sends me the message on the Monday saying, quoting me, can never go deep in this comp, Pez 2021. And very true.
And we'll be continually bringing up that quote over and over again. I might make that a little soundbite, Pez, every time you say that you know something, because out in straight steps, really disappointing for you, really disappointing, but it's also really good for football, Pez, because it just shows you how, again, the experts, well, I don't know if you're an expert, but how the experts continually pick teams wrong and they continually over-evaluate, under-evaluate, underappreciate different teams, but it's what makes one of our games one of the great games, because on any team's best day and a few things go one way, the odd-shaped ball bounces a different way, you can get a great result.
Yep.
And,
or you just stuff it up and pick the
completely.
wrong team and don't read the situation. But I did have to go a little bit more risky than a lot of the people in the comp who choose Essendon to lose this week because I just wanted to keep them alive. And because I lost my life in the first round, I said, all right, we'll risk it from here and see how we go. And out in straight sets, I get to watch the wonderful competition now and not be a part of it, which is good because the hosts I'm just going to sit back as the host.
Yeah, well, that's probably good, Pez. Well, I might handball over all the admin stuff to you then, and because you are, that way I can actually actively participate and I don't have to sort of throw it like you have, even though I'm 90% sure in the discussions we've had, you haven't been trying to throw it. But we also say goodbye to 3 other people this round. So round 2 and 4 people already gone. So for all those people out there who have sort of sit there back and as a listener and say, hey, you know what? It would be an easy comp to do. I just have to pick one loser. Can't pick the same team twice. It should be pretty easy. 4 people thought the exact same thing, and thanks for the donation.
Cheeky Round 2 plug for season 2022. Jump on board if you think it's too easy and see how you go. But let's get into the round recap.
Football underway. Would you ask for any greater drama in this match? First goal of the Nine Eagles. That's a start.
Well, we started at the MCG Sauce on the Thursday night. We had Carlton versus Collingwood, and Collingwood were victors by 21 points, 106-85. We had Harry McKay kick 4 goals, Martin 3, Gibbons 3. DeGoey kicked 4. They were all first half goals.
Yeah.
Myercheck 3, Elliott 2, Cox 2, and Elliott's actually gone down with an injury as well, which doesn't look good for Collingwood. But there were really good players, really good things, and Collingwood just took it to Carlton after Sauce in our end-to-end show, our preview show. You were really confident on Carlton.
Really confident in Carlton, but it was more of the deficiencies that Collingwood displayed during that round one. This is the ninth year in a row that Carlton will go 0-2. That's a crazy stat that I heard today on the radio. 9 years that they've backed up the first 2 rounds of the season, just like you, Pairs, in straight sets, 0-2. Really disappointing for Carlton. But yeah, I did have some questions over Collingwood's ability to be able to score. And one thing that they did do, they definitely bought it. De Goey, back to some of his best small forward sort of form. And that's what happens when you you have a depleted midfield, is your coaching staff in round one, they had to put him into that midfield and try and get some more go there. De Goey, excuse the pun, but they weren't able to do that. Score goals, obviously, the week before. So this week they put him back down there. They get Steele Sidebottom back, and they had to move that ball a lot. But one of the absolute superstars that obviously is not unnoticed because he plays at Collingwood, Darcy Moore.
Oh,
my goodness, they continually just kick the ball to him, it seemed. It seems like they were playing Marcus up and he was just the best man available.
that's what it seems like. But his positioning around the ground is just
incredible.
amazing. Jumping in front of people and getting those intercept marks. Harry Mackay did kick 4 goals, but he beat him a couple of times. Darcy Moore slipped over once and things like that. You speak about De Goey in the pre-show source. I know you were super confident on Carlton. I was a little bit iffy either way. I did jump on the Carlton line with you as well, the +1.5, so we were both wrong there. But I did say De Goey needs to play forward if they're going to be kicking these goals. Mason Cox, I know he kicked 2, but he is a B grade forward. I don't even know if you can call him B grade forward. He can't mark the pill. His set shots were no good, which is usually his strength. And they just need another form of goal kickers. I think Elliott going down with that ankle injury will really deplete them moving forward. Do we know if Collingwood are decent or not? We just don't know.
I feel like this was a result of the amount of scrutiny that came. The Carlton went in quite heavily favoured in this game, and for them to come off round one, a lot of Carlton supporters who have sort of become accustomed to losing. Obviously, the first 2 games they normally lose. The last 9 years, they've sort of built not a culture. I don't want to say a culture because they are trying everything to win, but they were accepting that poor performance against Richmond, even though they got close, but Collingwood wouldn't stand for it. And I feel like they more responded from the scrutiny this week. You had a big game from Brodie Grundy. You had, the midfield that we were asking questions about their age and their depth, and they had that respond. You had their forward line, De Goey kick 4, as we said. You had Mason Cox kicked 2 goals 3, and he continually put himself in good positions to score. I mean, it's always been a question about him, about his footy smarts, and does he have a proper understanding of the game for someone who likes to yap as much as he does. But it was good to see them, get back to that winning sort of ways. And I overshadowed probably that depth in the midfield. You had Jack Crisp, who was amazing in there, 36. Pendlebury, tell you what, you don't ever doubt a champion. 30 possessions. He looked amazing in there. 7 tackles, 5 clearances. Absolute beast. But what they missed the week before was Taylor Adams. Taylor Adams in that midfield.
I thought you were going to miss out on there. I was going to jump in.
13 clearances. He was an absolute beast. 29 disposals, kicked a goal as well. And that's what they missed from the week before, that clearing that football, which also helps when Brodie Grundy's giving the ball.
Yeah. Look, the way Collingwood scored, especially in that first half, Source, you may have noticed, it was just a kicking to those short leads, and the small forwards were the ones leading up. They weren't bombing it high to the tall forwards for Wiedering and Jones to just punch it over the boundary line or intercept it. They were actually playing smart footy and being able to do that. And then in the second half, Mason Cox got a little bit more involved because there was more space from, fatigue or whatever it was. Speaking about Carlton, they've got Saad who's come in, who looks decent off the back line. Zach Williams started in the middle, started on fire. I think he had around 7 touches in the first 10 minutes, and then he went missing for a while in that game. And I don't know if it's his tank, his fatigue, what it is, but he needs to be able to get in there, get the ball. And he's just bombing it forward, it seems, like what Treloar used to do at Collingwood. I think he needs to, spot up targets and pinpoint them more. The impressive thing, or the thing to look forward to for Carlton, is that run out of the back line when they can turn it over in Saad, and Jack Martin coming into that team in that forward line who gives them an option. So Carlton, I know they're 0-2. They are going to win some games this year, and they are going to beat up on some sides, but their issue is still consistent footy.
It's not only the consistent footy, Pez, it's exactly what you said there, is when they do go forward and they attack, they need to get away from this blazing the ball forward. They made Darcy Moore look a lot better than he actually is. They made him look like an absolute superstar. Like, not getting it wrong, he can take the intercept
Lock him
mark.
in for All-Australian.
100%, and he's definitely probably got the 6 votes from his 2 games in terms of, the AFL Players Association Award, but you can't just bomb the ball long. And Collingwood definitely made the adjustment. Those shorter kicks into the forward line, they realised deficiencies from the week before. Hats off to Nathan Buckley. Really came in with a proper game plan and executed it. But one of the things that helped him execute it was those players that we spoke about in week 1 actually responding in week 2.
It's really interesting. And the big thing, and it's the first game, so we're speaking a little bit longer about it, but the tackles source, Carlton only had 41 tackles to Collingwood 65. And that, for me, equals effort, equals positioning, game plan. I don't know exactly what it is, but Carlton need to look into that. Why are we not getting tackles? Why are we just letting, Collingwood have the ball and do what they want with it and chip it to that leading forward, inside forward 50? So they've got to do something, and they've got to fix that if it's effort or whatever. You look at Adelaide. Adelaide, very poor side last year. Come into this year, win the first week against the Cats and show really good effort and kick a lot of behinds against a Sydney side, which we'll talk about a bit later. But what they have is effort for every single quarter, every second they're out there on the field. Carlton, you got to play for the jumper or do something. You've got to fix this.
Yeah, I mean, they had 60 inside 50s, Carlton did, and they weren't at a success rate of 36%, Pez. 60 to 48 inside 50s, and they went at 36%. Their average for the season is 50 inside 50s. We spoke about it the week before that they get the ball in there enough. They've got to work on a better game plan, and I don't know whether it is a tall forward that they're kicking target to or they're looking at the lines that they're running, but they need to address that, and quickly, because this is a season that could definitely produce a lot of missed opportunities if Carlton don't jump on it. Both of these games, I think, for the way that Carlton played, and if you take into the way Richmond played that first week, that they really should have dominated them. But they could be 2-0 because they were in that game in that last quarter. They went into the lead, early in that last quarter against Richmond. They definitely were in this game, and they probably stats-wise, they probably dominated a lot of the stats, and it was inefficiency across the ground that let them down.
Yeah, no, I think that might be a trend that will happen, and we will be speaking about that in Carlton as well. We'll see how Collingwood go into the future in this early part of the season. We move on to the Friday night source where Geelong took on Brisbane down at Old Cardinia Park, GMHBA Stadium, and Geelong very controversially won 81-80, won by one solitary point with the biggest controversy we could have hoped for on a Friday night.
Yeah, there was a range of things that were controversial about this game. There was 3 or 4 things that really came up into it, and I don't want to take it away from the actual game at Pez, but it's something that we have to address. There was 3 main issues in this game. There was the officiating of the game in the last quarter, explicitly the last tackle on Mark Blitzars, who clearly had possession of the ball, clearly had opportunity. I was holding the ball. Yep. Holding the ball every day of the week. And I think that's the first thing that I think needs to be addressed. And for me, I was listening to a podcast today, and it's just not acceptable anymore for the AFL to come out every now and then with these blatant decisions and say that they're wrong. Too often, they go the other way, and they don't live in a culture where it's okay to make mistakes, and they don't use it as a learning tool. All the other sports around the world, we talk about the American sport all the time. They live in a culture that is built on bad calls get addressed nightly. They have their last 2-minute report, and I think that this is what the AFL need to do. They need to spend time and putting out a last quarter report and actually call out these plays to better the umpires instead of
all umpires.
All umpires. Instead of scrutinising against this poor bloke who's made a mistake. It's an obvious mistake. It was clear as day. For whatever reason they've made it, whether it be fatigue, bad positioning, players in the way, I don't know what it is, but it shouldn't be happening, and it's not okay now for the AFL when it's a blatant one to say it's wrong, but when they have those 50-50 ones, they say it's right.
Yeah, always.
You've got to lean into a culture of development and calling out that behaviour to improve, not to penalise.
That's why there's a 50-50 thing, because there's not a culture like that. So
yes, agree.
The AFL are doing that. And Geelong, I don't know what Geelong was doing, but Friday, 10:31. I just went back into our messages while you were talking there, Source. I said to you, the AFL is an absolute joke. I was not very happy on that Friday night, and it wasn't just with the Mark Blicavs call.
No, there was a range of different calls.
I think Geelong, I don't know what sports they were playing. They were playing a bit of rugby, a bit of super rugby, a bit of European handball, whatever it is they're playing. A throw that led to a goal. Cam Guthrie in the forward line. To a little snap for goal 15 metres out. Not too happy with that. And I know positioning of the umpire, it's one of the hardest things to be able to do. But there was another throw about 55 metres out from Selwood, and there's no way he could have got a hand to it. It didn't end in a goal. I think it ended in a behind. But they're the things you got to look at. And the free kick count, if you are a listener to this podcast, I don't care what the free kick count says. I care what happens from those free kicks. If it's a free kick and you deserve it and you get a goal from it, bang, it's irrelevant. That's fine because the free kick was there. And I think that Brisbane, dominated majority of the game. Geelong came out, obviously, in the first quarter, got their lead and did all those things. And Brisbane made a massive mistake at the end where Tomahawk's in the ruck there and is able to hit it to Isaac Smith in space. So that's probably what Brisbane are going to be looking at, because that's inexcusable, because that shouldn't happen when Brisbane are up by, 5 points or whatever they were, and it shouldn't happen. But they should have kicked that goal from the free kick that wasn't rewarded as well. They go 0-2. They also have to stay in Melbourne. They're not playing at the Gabba this week. They're playing at the MCG instead against the Collingwood side, who's just come off a win. So if they go 0-3, they're in big trouble, and you can blame the umpires all you want, and I'm fuming at the umpires, but sometimes you just got to be able to beat them, and I don't like the home ground advantage that the Cats got on Friday night.
Yeah, and it's I think it's something that I wouldn't put this game down to bad umpiring lost the game. For me, if Geelong had lost the game, that'd be fair. They didn't deserve to win it in my books, because they did a lot of things early that they just went away from in that third quarter. But on Brisbane's behalf, in that first quarter, they let the Cats off on so many scoring opportunities, so many good opportunities to score a goal. I mean, they had 25 scoring shots to 21. They should not have lost by a point.
Their kicking is still an issue.
Their kicking is a massive issue, and what I'm glad to hear is that the Brisbane Lions, and especially Fagan has come out and said, and he's like, so what? He goes, they missed the free kick. Like that's not why we lost the game, and they're taking that ownership. It's really good going into especially an interrupted preparation for this week that they're not blaming the umpires. Tell you what though, extremely frustrating, Pez, and as a Geelong supporter, and I was at the game, there were many times where I was actually sitting with my old man, and it was just like, there was a couple of times where we got free kicks, and I was like, that is not a free kick. There's no way in the world it is. But the Brisbane Lions need to work on that efficiency. The second big issue, Pez, that we'll probably speak during the week about is this behind the play business. Now, Lachie Neale all night was getting niggled from a range of different players. And
O'Connor did a great job on him.
Yeah, they were doing a fantastic job. And Neale was getting visually frustrated a couple of times, and you could see him throwing a couple of cheapies. And then Rowan, now I haven't caught the footage beforehand, and I'm not sure about the footage beforehand, but Gary Rowan behind the play, high impact, I think. It was intentional. It started again on the shoulder and has made its way up to the head. Has to get a couple of weeks for it, Bez.
Yeah, well, I think that's what's going to happen. But because it's so far off the ball, it actually makes it a lot worse.
I think so, yeah.
Lachie Neale, not being a tall man of stature, Rowan might have meant to hit him in the chest, that old chestnut.
Yeah, right.
Hit him in the chest and went up to his jaw.
I think Gary Rowan was just
whatever.
defending himself, I think it was. He just had to protect himself.
That's what he was doing. He was just bracing for contact or whatever. But you can't just swing like that, and that's not okay for the game. So a couple of weeks to Rowan there. I know some Cats fans won't be too happy about.
No, do you know what though? He hasn't been performing since he's come into the side. He had 3 or 4 good weeks when he first started in Geelong, and outside of that, he hasn't been great. And it's probably something that he probably could have some time to reflect and stop getting so visually frustrated and just throwing it away. But it's disappointing, I think. Yeah,
the other big talking point, your main man, I guess most controversial coach in the competition, Chris Scott, just fired up at quarter time. You were at the ground, Source. Were you able to see it, or did you have to wait until you got home?
No, we saw the sort of interaction. It was very obvious that they were migrating all towards each other. They did start separate, both Chris Scott, and originally they said it was Lachie Neale through the footage, but it looks like maybe Joe Danaher said something. I saw something on the AFL website tonight that there's even more footage now of people coming around there. There's a big please explain by the AFL, and it's still being investigated. But
Talk about not a good look for the game.
it's not. It's a horrible look, especially when all three things that have come out of this game, we haven't even got on about, Hawkins. Like, we haven't even got about Tui's return, 2 goals in the first quarter. Haven't talked about Eric Hipwood. Finally, the only goal kicker that they had was 4. Like, we're not talking about that. We're talking about rubbish stuff that doesn't need to be in the game.
No, and that's the coach's fault, that one, because
100%.
he doesn't have to go and do that. We know he's a sniper from back in the day when he played at Brisbane Lions, and he wanted to get rough and tumble. Mate, you're not a player. Stay away from it. Coach your team and just don't get involved. I hate it when he goes into press conferences and he always, like last year, complaining about free kicks that they didn't get. In this one, he didn't see the Blitzar's free kick in his press conference. Oh, sorry.
He actually said that he had prior. He had no prior, he said.
He said, I didn't see that. Rowan, I didn't see that. Mate, all your assistant coaches are there and they're going to show you everything before you go to the press conference. Don't just lie and say, I haven't seen it. Actually stand up and actually give us your opinion. If you're not going to do that, don't go to the press conference. I'm sick and tired of seeing him on the screen all the time, sooking about the umpire's call. Mate, when you're down at Geelong, especially in round 2, you got the you got the rub of the green with the umpires. So just shut your mouth and coach your team.
Yeah, most definitely. If we are going to talk about some of the good players that were there and actually played the game, I thought Guthrie was fantastic. I love Guthrie anyway, but I thought he did a fantastic job for 3 quarters of the game. Was a little bit undisciplined and a little bit didn't use the football well in the last quarter. Joel Selwood, when Patrick Dangerfield's not in that side, geez, does he stand up and he really plays the captain's role. 27 touches, he kicked a couple of goals, an absolute clearance beast. The hard all ball he gets, and not all of them were free kicks for too high either. I think there's only one that was too high there. But also new recruit, and I guess the hero Isaac Smith got the disposal off Tomahawk, who was also fantastic. Anytime the ball, can I just say his sheer strength in a ruck contest.
He's the best forward 50 ruckman in the comp.
How many times does he grab the ball out of the ruck and slam it on the boot? But
teams are going to have to start doing for that, because if you've got a Gorn or a Nat Nui or something, you can't just rest and let your forward go in the ruck against Hawkins. You've got to get your premier ruckman down there to stop that impact, because it leads to goals too much.
Well, it led to the winning goal in this one. Already in the game, he had done the exact same thing and got free, used his upper body strength, kicked an amazing goal. In this situation, he gave it to Isaac Smith, who kicked the goal. In terms of the Brisbane Lions, outside of Hipwood who kicked 4 goals, you had McCluggage, who worked hard. His inaccuracy sort of let him down a little bit. Dane Zorko was good with 22, but as you said, young O'Connell did an amazing job on the Brownlow medalist, and you could see the frustration not only through his actions later in the game, but also him getting under 20 disposals, which he doesn't do very often there, Pez.
No, he doesn't at all. The other Guthrie wasn't used as a substitute, so that's all right, isn't it?
Thanks for that, Pez.
And then
that's a good comment.
McInerney actually went down and went off this one, and he was replaced by Coleman, who had a bit of an impact in that last quarter as well. So I think for Brisbane, I think Lyons was the cleanest of their midfielders, moving the ball forward and through there. Hipwood had so many opportunities there. I think Danaher, he's just trying to find his feet, but
he kicked a nice bomb from outside 50.
That's what he needs to do, though. He can't pinpoint, because his kicking is quite off at the moment. So sometimes I was thinking, just turn from 70 out and get it down deep forward. Just do it. And he wasn't doing that a couple of times and turned the ball over, and it was no good. They lose by a point, go 0-2. Geelong escape, get 1-1, and they head into round 3.
Yeah, we head into the Saturday game, and we spoke about goal kicking being a problem. There is not a problem in New South Wales. Sydney absolutely piled on again. Multiple weeks, Pez, that they are, not only do they win in comfortable fashion, they beat the Adelaide Crows 121-88, and as we said, it's the Adelaide Crows, a team that's touted to be not a great side, but they did beat Geelong last week at home. But they continue to have multiple goal kickers. Franklin with 3, the return of him, which was fantastic. Heaney 3, Hickey 2, the 5 club player, Warner 2, and then you had some also nice little helpfuls from Papley, Goulden, Reid, Wicks, Parker, McInerney. They've got so many arsenal of weapons down there, Pez. If they can get that midfield going, I asked you this on Saturday night. I sent you the message saying, I sent you a message that wasn't too clear, but are Sydney actually good? Or is it just... Well, I think that they've got the scoring ability to be good, but is this a small sample size? Is this sustainable for the Swans?
There's too many unknowns at the moment, because there's too many players that are just playing their second game, and they're very impressive at the moment, and it seems like they've turned a leaf and not going to be in that bottom 4, bottom 6 type thing, and people are all talking them and touting them for the finals. I think they do need Buddy to stay fit. They need Heaney to stay fit, which they haven't been able to do in the past seasons. They've still got those players like Luke Parker and Josh Kennedy in the midfield that are experienced, and then they've got a good mix around them. Can Tom Hickey keep it up? He hasn't been able to do that at his other clubs. We don't know. But the thing here is high-scoring game, a lot of effort, a lot of pressure. Sydney 31 scoring shots, Adelaide 33. They kicked 11-22 and kicked themselves out of the game. Yeah. Came back a little bit in that fourth quarter because they were going to lose by 40 plus. The biggest thing for me is Tex Walker. He's kicked 11 goals over the first two rounds. I could not believe my eyes when I'm watching it. He kicked 4 goals from forward 50 tackles holding the ball.
He looks so much fitter. He's dropped a lot of weight in the off-season. He looks
when
so
have
much
you ever
fitter.
seen Tex Walker chase in defensive 50? He got 4 free kicks from holding the ball tackles that he did. It was unbelievable.
Which is a really positive sign. We spoke a couple of years ago about the culture in Adelaide and how, that mass exodus that really happens. But I think that some of these young potential stars, and not stars is probably the poor word, but the way that they shone at the end of 2020 and towards the last couple of games, they really were competitive. They've rejuvenated Tex and they've made him look forward, and he's got it on track. He's got a little bit fitter. He wants to keep his AFL career going, but. Yeah, it was exciting to see Tex. And even when he's younger days, I don't think he ever sort of applied that pressure.
He wasn't a chase tackler guy.
No,
he was just that big.
As soon as he was a very one dimensional. As soon as the ball was not off his mark, he would basically just let the ball go and set up for the next one. But really impressive for Sydney. Those young guns, back-to-back NAB AFL Rising Stars. Errol Goulden had the first week. He was amazing again, 22 disposals and a goal. And fellow Academy graduate Braden Campbell, another outstanding performance.
Get rid of the Academy.
Halfback. 25 disposals, 21 of them kicks, and he nabbed... the NAB Rising Star for so we back-to-back stars for the Swans. And honestly, Pez, they could go the first 3 weeks because they've got a lot of young talent there.
Chad Warner had 20 disposals there and kicked his 2 goals as well, the 19-year-old.
So a bit unlucky.
They've got a lot of them down there. And I'm really confused now in terms of Adelaide. If Adelaide are playing at home, are they going to be decent? Are they going to be able to compete in games for longer? I thought they would, really struggle with the longer quarters this year and they're really young side. Will Sydney be able to fatigue like that? Can they keep it up and keep healthy? It's very interesting and makes for a really good start of the season coming up.
Most definitely. I think for me, they led 13 points halfway through that first term. The difference between their good footy and their bad footy is still miles apart. And, we saw Sydney to be able to get back on top through just a bad patch. And as you said, some inaccuracies. You saw them drop their heads a little bit. And Sydney with that young forward line, or that young everything, realistically, that run and gun. And they sort of really got themselves set up for the rest of that game. And then they sort of went from there. And I think that's what's important. If Adelaide are going to be that side that, is competitive at home, and possibly would win 50% of their games at home, just depending who they're playing, obviously, they need to correct that bad football patches that they have. That unfortunately they had bad patches of football for 2020, 2019, and a little bit of the last game of 2018 as well.
Well, I did notice with Sydney they were running into the forward line and moving fast, and then at some stages they were slowing down. So they had plus 60 in the disposals, and they had 61 inside 50s for 32 shots. Where Adelaide, with 60 less disposals, had 55 inside 50s and 33 shots on goal. Yes, they were pinging it from 50, 45 out on the run a few times, which is where a lot of their behinds came from. So they weren't actually spotting up the targets and doing those things. Tex kicked 6, but 4 of them were from inside 50 tackles. So they're not spotting up that key forward and getting those easy set shots. They did with McAdams in that last quarter where I think he kicked 3 goals. So... that's when the game was done and dusted as well. So can Adelaide actually find that forward structure where they can actually get some easy ball and easy goals moving forward?
Yeah, the one thing I will add, Pez, it was an interesting stat that I took out of this game, and it's something that you don't like to talk about, but it's something that I've just observed, and I know that we were talking about the umpires in the first week of football. Last week, Adelaide had 30 free kicks, and they were like 15 more than the other team. This week they had 29 free kicks and they were 16 more than the other team. They actually lead the competition in free kicks, 59 for, 30 against. And the team that is second, North Melbourne, 54 and 42. Interesting, is that the way that the AFLs are viewing those two teams touted to be really low and giving them a little bit more leniency, trying to keep them in games?
too small a sample size for me. I know that Adelaide's free kicks over the two games and watching the Geelong game closely was through a lot of effort and tackling and a really good place. So we'll see if that's a trend over the 5 weeks or so, and we'll give it a little bit more time, especially with North Melbourne, because I don't know how they're getting so many free kicks unless it's the forwards getting it into the back of the defenders or
Must be
whatever
out
back
the full
there.
or something.
Yeah, out on the full, and they've just been lucky with that. But we will get to talk about my favourite team, North, very, very soon. But before we do that, we're heading to Adelaide, Port Adelaide versus Essendon. And a lot of Essendon fans doing the old concede when Sauce and Pez both had Essendon in the bottom four. And a lot of Essendon fans just gave us stick for those first 2 weeks. How you got Essendon in the bottom four? They're going to finish higher than that. And then after they saw their performance against Port Adelaide, they've got some injuries now, which wouldn't be too happy about. And they've just gone the old, you were right. Just after round 2, which I'm surprised.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, as you're alluding to here, Port Adelaide definitely dominated this whole game, 119-65. But I think it was the fashion that sort of Essendon, really sort of depleted themselves. Up until halftime, they kicked 4 goals, 4-7. They had 11 scoring shots to 17. It's just... There wasn't enough forward entry for them. They were sort of all over the place in terms of, the structures. Similar things that we saw in round 1 and the things that we spoke about in Carlton. Just throwing the ball on the boot. Some really disappointing injuries. Heppel wasn't able to take part in the game before, and he was replaced beforehand by Gleeson with that back injury that continually seems to tighten up. And it is really concerning going forward for him. Young recruit Caldwell did his hammy. That's really disappointing.
Yeah, rough.
Draper, who actually showed some really positive signs in round 1. He's done his leg. That's all it's got here, leg.
Yeah, there's a bit of an issue with the ankle. They don't really know what it is, but
No.
a bit with the ankle, it's not too good for him.
Yeah, and then running and kicking machine, Shield, who has been a bit of a shining light for them, and last year, just trying to work on that actual kick for himself. He's done his knee, so really, really disappointing for those 3 players, who probably would have been in their best 22, you would say, during week 1. Are all going to miss some stints of footy going into
Dylan
a really, really tough game against St Kilda.
Luckily, it's not an ACL. He did the MCL, I think it was, or the PCL, so he's out for about 3 months or so. So he will get back to footy, which is good, and he won't have to miss the whole 12 months. But yes, Essendon depleted injuries, but how good do Port Adelaide look? I know they only played against Essendon, and we don't rate Essendon very highly, but that recruit, Alir, he just, talk about positioning for Darcy Moore. He's going to be competing with Alir for that centre-half back position because he just gets in the right spot at the right time, goes for those intercept marks, grabs them at the right spots, and then his disposal, much improved. I actually loved watching him when he was at Sydney, and a lot of people, kept dropping him. Longmire would drop him, and I was like, he missed kicks maybe one or two a game. At the moment in Port Adelaide, with their run and their carry, especially with Zach Butters in that midfield and having an absolutely outstanding game, 3 votes for him. They've just got guns all over the ground, and they are super impressive.
Super impressive, and I think we really need, we really sold, not really sold him short, but I think we definitely both forgot about how much potential Zach Butters showed last year into making an All-Australian side. There is no, if he continues this up, he isn't a guaranteed into the All-Australian. He looks absolutely amazing at 20 years old. He had 36 disposals and a goal, but he just looks mature, his body... He doesn't play to his body size. He just looks like a big, bustly midfielder, but he's really not.
You know what he is? He's kind of between the midfield and the forward. So he's kind of that link-up player, that Tom Lynch role when Adelaide were in the grand final. But Tom Lynch was that lead-up type, I'll take a mark and then I'll kick. Where Zach Butters, he can go get his own footy and do that. He can lead up and mark and get inside forward 50, run it in, make the right decision and just go from there. And it was great to see. You've got Charlie Dixon kicked 4, Georgiades kicked 4. Whoever's coming up against Essendon, especially if you're a top side, make sure you cash in and you try and kick a bag as a forward because you have a good day, especially if it's a nice sunny Saturday afternoon.
Nice sunny Sunday afternoon. I mean, Zach Butters, back to him for 2 seconds, Pez. The only other person that was any better than him was Ollie Wines, and that's exactly who he sort of plays like, isn't it? Ollie Wines, that small in-between sort of midfield, small forward sort of player. Zach Butters, he's a younger version of it. They got 2 of the bastards.
I don't know. I'd give Zach Butters the 3 votes in that game because he did get the goal and, a little bit of stats. We know the umpires will always look at the stats in that, but Ollie Wines definitely up there. Travis Boak, very, very impressive. And one player that is improved out of sight for me is Dan Houston. running off that back line, actually running forward and kicking goals as well. I was worried about his disposal a few seasons back, but in this Port Adelaide side, while they're winning, no one's worried about their disposals. They had nearly 100 more than Essendon.
Yeah, and I think it was really interesting as well because he was one of those players that sort of would get around the 20, 23 disposal mark but not make a lot of impact. Now he's starting to use the ball a lot more efficiently. He's trying to get a lot, or he's not trying to. He's getting a lot more impact. It does help when your team's winning by 60 points in every other week. But, you look a lot better when your team's winning, and he's starting to really develop a better kicking style that is a bit more efficient.
Yeah, and when you are winning and playing footy like this, it's so much easier to dispose of the ball and build your confidence up. Looking forward to the game this week over at Optus, where West Coast take on Port Adelaide, and we'll speak about that in our end-to-end segment in another show coming up this week, Sauce. But give these Essendon fans that are listening to this show, give them some hope. What have they got to look forward to?
They got St Kilda next week, so they were just as disappointing. That's a potential win for them.
Got a chance to win.
As I said, I think that the game plan that they're trying to emulate, it is a game plan that has shown success. I think they're really trying to do what Richmond do. They're trying to do what who's another team that sort of plays like that. I guess Collingwood when they were up and about. That's that short kicking, running across the back line, finding the open space and going. It's going to be tough with those injuries because some of those injuries were a big part of how you were moving the football. But I think, in terms of hope, you've got St Kilda next weekend who were very disappointing. They could, they're going to play
St Kilda don't have a ruckman either.
They don't have a ruckman. They're going to play them at probably Marvel. They probably play them at Marvel, so that it's the ground that they play well. That's the hope I'm going for. But realistically, Pez, I think they fall 0-3 and they could even go 0-5, 0-6.
And Zach Merritt, who's touted as a Brownlow chance, yes, he had 28 disposals, but I don't think he has a big impact on the game. And Essendon supporters, you've got to start looking at what type of impact these players are actually having. I don't care if he gets 28 disposals a game if we're just containing him and he's getting handballs and things, kind of like Tom Mitchell at Hawthorn, where he doesn't gain any meterage or anything like that. One thing that I'm a bit concerned about, so they had Cale Hooker kick 3 goals, Sauce. I'm actually really concerned that they still have to play Cale Hooker up forward.
Yeah.
Because you've got to have someone at your club that can do that. And Cale Hooker, does he not look like the most awkward footballer ever, even when he was in defence?
I was with a couple of Essendon fans on the weekend, and one of the comments was, it's really concerning when one of your best backmen is your best forward. And then the comment after that was, and then he's not good at either position really. So it is really concerning for Essendon.
I don't remember if he was actually All-Australian or he's really close to All-Australian one year as a defender. And you guys are playing him up forward, and yes, he's kicked a couple of goals, but whoever you put in that position, obviously it's going to fall in their lap sometimes. But very worrying signs for Essendon. Port Adelaide stay at the top of the ladder and continue to go. We head to Saturday night, a game I was at, Source. St Kilda took on Melbourne. Melbourne ended up winning by 18 points, 91-73. And if this wasn't the most disappointed I've been going to the footy in a while.
Yeah, it was a disappointing game, but before we get on to the actual game, Pez, it was a really, really great tribute to Danny Frawley. The Gary Lyon, Stuart Lowe and Tony Lockett, they did a fantastic job addressing the players before the game in something that you don't normally see. They had, for anyone who hasn't checked out the footage, make sure you go and check it out because it was really touching listening to Gary Lyon address both teams and both captains, and they had all of the teams standing, one Melbourne, one St Kilda, not linking arms or anything, but around the centre circle, on the open mic, addressing the crowd, having some silence. They had 10 seconds of silence that, it was really, really powerful and a really great message about people struggling and the impacts of football in terms of mental health and realistically, giving life a crack and really, really reaching out and doing the right thing for not only your mates, but it was a really, really clear message that I thought was done very tastefully. And it's something in football that is a bit of a stigma, not great thing to talk about mental health, but I think they addressed it perfectly.
And one thing I was rapt to actually be there to see live, and Gary Lyon, I know Stuart Lowe spoke well as well, but Gary Lyon, can he speak in front of a crowd? And he was absolutely amazing in front of the whole crowd there. He's in the centre of the ground. All the players and umpires are there. For all his families there. It was just a real special moment. And you looked around and you didn't have any of those idiots calling out in my section where I was, which was really good and really respectful. And it's just time to reflect and time to think and just give your mates a call or a message and either see how they are or see if they want to catch up and just have a chat or just hang out. So really, really good stuff with that.
Really, really good stuff. All right, talking about the game and reflecting, Pez, you were at the game. It was very disappointing. The Saints were sort of in it in the first quarter. There was a lot of mistakes made early from both teams. It looked like they were
Both teams, it was shocking.
It was a shocking first sort of quarter, but I think opportunities for both teams to go on top into that second quarter. Up until half-time, again, it was a pretty close sort of game. In the second half, the D's just took over.
Look, in the second quarter, Saints actually got out to a 16-point lead, and they were like, yep, all right. Everyone was like, yep, all right, we've got this. This is pretty easy. And then Melbourne just turned it around, got back evens at halftime, and then just took it forward from there. St Kilda, I don't know what their game plan was. Their skills were atrocious. We've got a big forward in Max King. They're not kicking it to him in the contest. We actually decided, we're going to spot up Max Gawn time after time after time. He was just sitting in the hole source, and they weren't kicking it to him. If they did decide to kick it long down to someone and someone was actually there, it's Jack Higgins, who's one of the smallest men on the ground. And Melbourne, with May, Lever, and Max Gawn filling that hole, their defence was really strong. The player that really impressed me for Melbourne is Christian Salem. I really rated him as a kick last year, but by golly, did he get them running. And every time he got the ball, he made something happen. On the other end of the spectrum, Bradley Hill, paying him $900,000 a year. I messaged you before the game source. I said Bradley Hill at Marvel because we haven't really seen him there yet. You wait for this, and he just could not hit a target at all. He would turn the ball over. Melbourne would go down and get an easy goal, and I was just shattered.
Yeah, I mean, as you would be though, Pez, because what you described to me in the pre-match, we were texting back and forth. He was brought into your club for his elite running skill. Him playing at Marvel Stadium should be his bread and butter. And there were so many times that he was streaming through the middle, and
gave him the footy.
Even though he was not under pressure, well, it didn't appear to be pressure. Maybe there was perceived pressure, but even then, I'm giving maybe it's a bit of a cop-out by saying that. Just poor use of the footy and kept turning the ball over and over and over again. And it comes to the point where, this is not just the first time that he's, has not used the football well, even though having a great use of, being a great user previously of it. I think it's time that the Saints really need to look at the drawing board and see if he's up for selection this week.
I 100% agree. If I was on the coaching panel, I'd be putting Brad Hill's name up to drop him. And when we got him to the club, how excited I was on this podcast to actually get a ball user that can kick it inside forward 50. There's no use getting him if he's going to turn the ball over in the middle of the ground and they're just going to run the other way and spot up an easy target inside forward 50 and have these easy shots at goal. I just don't know with this St Kilda team. It's Melbourne. It's at Marvel, not their ground. And it's not St Kilda that lost it. Maybe it's Melbourne that won it, Source, because they were pretty impressive. And have we underrated them? I don't know. I'm not going to make that call yet. I don't believe so. I think they're going to lose a lot of games this year. But if you don't have the game plan to go with Melbourne and you're just going to let Max Gawn drop in that defensive 50, you're gonna struggle.
Yeah, I mean, for me, in this game, their disposal efficiency was a lot better. Generally, it hasn't been amazing the way they've sort of been, just throwing it away. But if you look at their efficiency inside 50 compared to St Kilda, 72 to 36 Pez, and Melbourne's average for the year and last year was about 50% in their inside 50, and they played a decent sort of game. But St Kilda allowed them just to do whatever they wanted in there. You had Oliver had 37, Petrarca had 30, you had Salem who had 30. You had too many players just getting the ball, and we know that they accumulate the ball. But if you're not going to apply pressure and allow them to look better than they are, because we know this is a problem of Melbourne, you can't expect to win. And I think
no pressure kicking, Source. So it's easy for them. Training drill.
Yeah, and I think that the things that we worry about Melbourne are still issues. But if they get a run at things and they can find their way into a confident position, we saw what they did during the when they got into that final series against Geelong. When they are confident going into a game, they only need 1 or 2 quarters for their disposal to be efficient, and they can be dangerous because they do get a lot of the pill. Their game plan is there. Just their skill level isn't consistent enough or good enough, I think, to maintain and win multiple games throughout a year.
Yeah, and what they do need, or what an opposition team needs against Melbourne, is you need a ruckman. It doesn't matter if they can't beat Max Gawn. They have to be able to compete. They have to make it hard for him. St Kilda did not make it hard for him. Paul Hunter, he's not very quick off the mark. He can't really run. You've got your 3rd and 4th string ruckman in at St Kilda at the moment with Ryder and Marshall injured. But you let Max Gawn run anywhere on the field by himself and don't even go to him. Sean McKernan, oh my goodness, was he terrible as well. I cannot wait until Ryder and Marshall are back, and hopefully there's no more injuries. I would delist Sean McKernan right now because if he takes 1 or 2 marks a game, he'll just try and go inboard and turn it over. Now, one thing I did notice, Sauce, and I've only noticed this because I've only gone to this only game for the year, and I've noticed it live. When Melbourne were running towards the boundary line and they're going about 70 metres out to their forward 50, they've got 2 players, yeah? That one player will pass it out wide, and you got 2 St Kilda players. That player that was out wide drew those 2 St Kilda players to the boundary line, handballed it back inboard, and then that player had so much time and the forwards had so much space to lead into, and that's how they were breaking apart that St Kilda defence. St Kilda were getting sucked into the boundary line, 2-on-1, and they were leaving that other player open to, under no pressure, to hit those inside forward 50 targets. So I don't know how that was allowed to happen quarter after quarter, but the big review for St Kilda this week, and that has to be fixed.
Yeah, and I think with the pace that Melbourne display, and they've got elite ball winners because they do win the ball well. They are smart users of the football in those smaller shorts. It's just when they get in that open space, a lot of the time, excuse my language, but they shit themselves and they just bomb it long. If they can get some forward targets to work into the right positions, because how many times, and then that's why we continually talk about their skill level, because they seem to have so much time and they just blaze away at it. If they can get an organised structure, an organised forward line, they can get the leading patterns right, even if they can get the ability to be able to back themselves and go into a streaming goal from 40 out, they're going to be good.
Well, the big problem I see with Melbourne is probably their coaching panel at the moment.
Yep.
And if you've got a coach that's actually going to do something about it and not play into their hands perfectly like St Kilda did on the weekend, I think you're going to be able to definitely beat Melbourne. So there you go.
Yeah, most definitely. Disappointing for your Saints, Pez, but bounce back against Essendon next week. All right, speaking about bounce-back games, the Gold Coast Suns, after a disappointing performance that we sort of touted that no longer are we going to refer to them as a brave effort. It was a disappointing effort. Came out and really impressed with a 6-goal second quarter that set them up for a 56-point win against the helpless North Melbourne.
Oh, helpless North Melbourne, all right. Only kicking 5 goals for the game. 98-39. Gold Coast, nearly a 10-goal win, 59 points there. So, Sauce, King, the King brothers, I'm in love. Just 3 goals to the other King. So good. Rankine kicked 3 as well after not kicking one in the first week. Sexton got his 2 goals, which he usually does. And North, you're in a lot of trouble there. Robbie Tarrant, not back for a while. Their forward line, they've just got no forwards down there. They've got to put Goldstein down there at some points, but then they don't have Ruckman. Do they have the midfield to win it out of there? Gold Coast, this was a good game for them to build their confidence and go, you know what? We can do this against other sides as well. We can win it in the middle. We can kick the ball around. We can be accurate. We did it for 3 quarters against West Coast at their home ground. That last quarter, we just shit ourselves or did whatever and lost by 4 goals. But this really good for the Gold Coast with Anderson, Miller, Collins down back, Lockie Weller, as he always does, running around there as well. So good to see the Gold Coast. I've tipped them for the finals this year, and that's a start 1-1.
Yeah, and I think one of the big moves is Lukosius. Lukosius moving off that half back and playing a more consistent wing role. He looks at home there. He had 22 disposals. He didn't make many mistakes with them, and he sent a lot of depth into that forward line, really penetrating and allowing Rankine and King and Sexton to be able to do what they wanted. Now, they weren't playing much. The North defence were very, very much so depleted with the absence of Robbie Tarrant there, who was one of their shining lights in week 1, but Lukosius really has taken that next step. And I think what's good, Pez, is that it's those other players that are starting to step up, like Noah Anderson, Bowes. It's not just the same old people. It's not Swallow and Alice and Miller every week. We are getting some of those other young guns that were really starting to showcase their skill level. Like Markov again was with 20 disposals.
Oh, good recruit.
He's a great recruit for them. Will Brodie looked fantastic. He had 18 touches, 4 clearances. They look good, and I think that this is the win that they needed. This is the win that we spoke about, Pez, that they needed to come out. They needed to dominate, and this is exactly what they're gonna do if they're gonna set themselves up for a top 8 spot. Beat the teams they're meant to beat, and not just beat them convincingly. Go into the next week with some confidence. Get the possessions into the kids. Get the goals into the forwards, and make themselves look a lot better in terms of percentage.
It's shocking. One thing for the Gold Coast that's going to really screw them is their injuries. We know Matty Rowell went down in round 1. Sam Day
Can't get a break, this kid.
with a knee, and Butterick, the young and upcoming star as well, with a knee. So we don't know how long those injuries are going to be. Hopefully they can get back on the park eventually, but it's going to keep adding up if these injuries keep going.
Yeah, Butterick is a really big one for them because he was fantastic in week 1 against West Coast. Hopefully he's not out for too long, but yeah, Day, poor Day. He's got all the talent and he's exactly what they need back there, but he just can't seem to...
He shows glimpses.
Yeah, he just can't seem to get a good run at it, and it's, hopefully it's not the same story with Matty Rowell, but who has been ruled out for the season, I think, as well, which is a bit disappointing.
Yeah, it brings a tear to my eye. Like, if St Kilda are shithouse, what have I got to look forward to? Maybe Matty Rowell.
Yeah, they're my second team, mate.
We'll have to go there. But, well, Gold Coast did what you have to do. You played against North. You're expected to do that. So you keep going. You go into round 3. We head into the Sunday fixture. Hawthorn taking on Richmond. And it wasn't as big a blowout as some people thought it would be, Source. Richmond 78 to Hawthorn's 49 for a 29-point win.
Yeah, it wasn't scoreboard-wise, but the Tigers never looked out of control of this game. They continually just did enough, and I spoke about this in the preseason show, Pez, that they've got to a stage where they just need to do enough. They know exactly how to switch it on and switch it off, and realistically, the Hawthorn showed some energetic glimpses. I guess they were really up there. They were enthusiastic. They're sort of always within arm's length, but it was sort of reminded me of a big brother just sort of sitting there going, yeah, mate, I'll let you get a little bit close enough. As soon as we need to put the foot down, we'll put the foot down, and they would kick 2 or 3 goals in sequence, and then stretch it back out.
That's exactly what it was. In I think it was the third quarter. The third quarter. There was only 1 goal apiece in that third quarter. It was just middle footy, end-to-end footy. Richmond not too worried about anything. Dustin Martin kicked a great goal out of the middle. He could have had another 4 goals, Source, but he just wants to give them off all the time. Gave off 2 to Rewalt. When he was 45 out in a 45-degree angle, and then one Joe the Goose over the top as well. So Prestia with 29 was really good. Cochin came back into the side and does what he usually does. Edwards with his run, and Bolton with 20 disposals as well. I really like his run in the midfield that he gets for the Tigers.
Yeah, you're going to hear this lots when we're talking about Richmond. The same names: Prestia, Martin, Cochin when he's available, and then you probably pick one of 3 of the other role players, Lambert or Short, and
they'll always bob up.
They just do enough. Hawthorn, Tom Mitchell was. I don't know how to put this. He was good. He was pretty good. We had 37 touches.
He got the footy, but did he go forward enough?
Well, there was a stat that I sent to you in the week. He had 37 in the first half. He had 20 disposals or something and 13 metres gained.
Well, there you go. He's hand passing sideways and backwards, isn't he?
Yeah, but he was a shining night for them. They had Hardwick who did well as well. He had 31. The young recruit, and I'm not even going to try to say his name, Pez. He has been fantastic for them. Number 29, Jiat Changuth. I'm terrible with names, as we know, but they looked all right. Hawthorn. I think that they're going to be one of those teams that really do decline, and I think I've actually underestimated how poor Hawthorn are going to be this year, because they showed enough to be able to stay in arm's length, but I don't see them being able to have that sort of killer instinct and where they're going to sort of blow games open, Pez.
Yeah, we'll speak about Hawthorn for a bit. I was really impressed with Day. He was playing in that defence and he was running the ball out. Unfortunately, he got injured and had to get replaced by the medical sub. But they had sometimes when they would go inside forward 50 and they'd spot up the target. Bruce kicked 2 goals from beautiful kicks inside forward 50. And Kazitsky getting up the ground and really impressing. He had 1 goal, 1. What do you have? 6 marks, 9 disposals, and quite impressive young man in that game against the great defences we know in Richmond. So they've got a few things. I think some of their players were really disappointing. Warple, who's lost a little bit this year at the moment, only with 16 disposals, and is he playing that little half forward role and not really in the midfield? So. They've got some names there. They've got some big names, but yeah, the decline, I agree they are. They're going to come out and they're going to steal a win or 2, as we said in the preseason, but they're not going to feature in September or anything like that. So Hawthorn with the 29-point loss, they're just going to have to go for honourable losses at the moment when they're playing against quality opposition like Richmond.
Yeah, and I think we're going to speak about a lot of the, anytime Richmond's playing, it's going to be a routine win, and every time Hawthorn's playing, it's going to be an honourable loss because there's nothing impressive either of these sides except for Richmond's ability to be able to turn it on whenever they please. And that's sort of a good way to sort of describe the game because nothing really happened during the game. The usual suspects did it for Richmond. There were a couple of shining lights for Hawthorn, but realistically, this game was a non-event.
Oh, exactly right. And you go to the main event for the Sunday, which is...
What a game this was.
The Western Bulldogs versus the West Coast Eagles. Western Bulldogs win in the end, 100-93 by 7 points. And you had stars all over the ground. You had a midfield battle for the ages. And the weaknesses that I spoke about in the Bulldogs forward line and defence really shone through. And West Coast just couldn't, even with Nat Nui, and Nat Nui had a big dominant game and he was getting the clearances and the ruck taps and everything. Bulldogs in that midfield, they just kept going. I am a little bit worried about them, Source, but I'll let you speak about the game first.
No, I think it's a good start because, Jack McRae, Bontempelli, they combined for 71. Then you also had Caleb Daniel, Liberatore, they both had 26. Dunkley had 25. Bailey Smith had 25. Trelaw had 25. Lockie Hunter had 21. DeRay had 21, 22. Lipinski had 20. Like, all these players are getting the ball. It's good to see them getting wins. I do worry about it. How they're not blowing games open for the amount of over possessions that they had. They had 96 less. 96 more disposals than the West Coast Eagles, which means they're controlling the game. They're averaging 436 between two games of disposals.
Mate,
the handballs,
I'll tell you, it's a
192 to 93. They're just overpossessing the ball. They need to move this ball forward, similar to what we're talking about, Tom Mitchell. Too many players are trying to get their possessions, and I think it's a game plan thing. I don't think that they're very well coached, but they need to start blazing away. But I also think about what you said, Pez. It's because they don't have any forward options.
And I think that's the option that they're doing at the moment. Yeah. They're just running the ball in and handballing. It worked out beautifully and ended in a Bailey Smith goal along the ground at the top of the goal square there. It was absolutely amazing, but... Bruce kicked 3. He kicked 3 goals. He kicked a good one.
He's done for the year
from 52 out. Like he's done that. He's grabbed the jumper. He's done all of those things. Norton kicked 3. Bontempelli, he was an absolute superstar. I think he'll get the 3 votes with his 3 goals and what he was doing around the ground. But all those players that you spoke about with the high possession, that's all they kept doing because you know what? They had to against West Coast because they couldn't kick it inside. You know what happened when they kicked it inside? Barras would mark the ball. Rotham would play absolutely amazing in defence. They've found another one, West Coast, Rotham. The McGovern, he didn't even have to do much in that defence this time. Jack Darling was strong up forward. It's just West Coast, their midfield. Tim Kelly was that player that needs to come in and get the clearance and hand it off and kick it inside forward 50. They looked great when they got it inside forward 50, but Bulldogs possessed the ball and probably over-possessed the ball, but I think it was part of their game plan because of West Coast's strength in defence.
Yeah, most definitely their strength in defence. You spoke about Tim Kelly looking good. Not only that, Dom Sheed, 26 disposals, 11 clearances, but it's all off the work of Nat Nui. Nat Nui, a couple of years ago, I sort of touted that I don't know whether he is probably one of the most dominant ruckmen in the league, and I think that he does the flashy things for short periods of the games, but he worked really hard, and he made that midfield look elite, and when they did get the ball and they got the clearance, they went into that damaging forward line. As we know, 7 goals between Kennedy and Darling, and Oscar Allen chipped in for another 2. If they can get that sort of results for most weeks, they're going to be a lot further along than I had them, Pez, because I was a little bit gun shy on the way that they were going to deliver that midfield, and I thought that it was an aging midfield, and realistically, a lot of people have them this as their last sort of run at the premiership, and this is their window closing. But if they can do that, and they've got Barassan back, and they're getting a couple of those injuries back into the side like Yao, and they can start to move that ball. They might actually be a shot in this 21-20 season.
Yeah, we definitely can't write off the West Coast Eagles because they do have those players. And I'll say again, Jack Darling, he impresses me when he goes up the ground or even inside 50 with his strong hands and the way he marks the footy. I do think that teams are going to know how to play against West Coast and not bomb the ball to the loose man in McGovern and Barras and those people down there. So they are going to have to, win the ball in the middle of the ground and go forward quickly. I think West Coast haven't really adjusted to the new rules and the quickness of we're going from here.
I don't know if they have the ammo to be able to do that though, Pez, and that was the concern I had about them.
Yeah, so I think Tim Kelly is one that really needs to be able to do that. Dom Sheed's another one that really needs to be able to do that. One perfect player to do that who is out, who you mentioned, is Yo.
Yeah.
He would suit these new rules where the guy has to stand on the mark and he can just shoot off. So hopefully he can eventually come back into the West Coast Eagles lineup. I actually, Jamie Cripps, really disappointing. He had a shot from about 10 metres out to put them 3 goals up in that fourth quarter. And he's kicked it into the man on the mark, gone in for a point, and then West Coast just capitulated from there. The Bulldogs kept going and kept trying, didn't bow their heads, and were able to get the win there. And Bontempelli finished it off with a goal pretty much after the siren at the end after being up by a point. So West Coast couldn't get Steeled over the line. They were away. So I actually haven't looked at the fixture. We don't know the fixture if the Bulldogs are playing against the Eagles again over there, because I think if this was over there, Eagles take the chocolates there on the bigger ground with their defence, because the Bulldogs would actually not have to handball that many times. They'd actually have to kick it to get forward. So I was disappointed backing in West Coast to get the win. Had him at the line as well, which we'll speak about at the end of the show after our last game source. But impressive by the Bulldogs. They've got 2 wins. They'll get these sort of wins, but I am worried about them when they play really good opposition.
Yeah, and I think also when they play away from Marvel, the Marvel Stadium really suits their style of play, to being able to overpossess that football. But as I spoke about before, about them not being really well coached, everyone in the league knows that West Coast have that last man back, and their forward line is already a depleted forward line in the Western Bulldogs. I think it's time to bring in that their young number 1 draft pick. I think he was impressive in the VFL again, or the reserves or whatever it is. Kicked a couple of snags. I think it's time to bring him in, because their forward line is really concerning. You can't have Bruce kicking 3 goals, because he's not going to do that for the rest of the year. They need someone down there who's going to kick goals. You can't have your best midfielder in Bontempelli. And when I say best midfielder, your most impactful, forward-pressured, forward-delivering player kicking 3 goals. It's just not good enough. Put him into the midfield, put some of these other guys on the wing, teach them how to actually run the ball forward and do what Bontempelli does. Then you've got Norton down there who can kick 3 or 4. That's fine with him. He's starting to get his hands to the footy. But they need another target down there that's got a good leading pattern.
They need something down there, because that's what's gonna
kill them.
That's what's gonna kill them against those good teams, Source, and their defense as well. Their defense can't stand up. Not many defenses can stand up against the Eagles forward line if the ball's going inside forward 50 efficiently like that. But the Bulldogs forward 50 against the top teams, not going to be able to defend against the Richmond or against the Port Adelaide. They're going to really struggle against those sides. So we move to the last and final game of round 2. A big upset in our eyes, Source, who we thought GWS would win. Fremantle actually went in favourites, but Fremantle won 87-51. And GWS, after kicking a goal in the first 30 seconds, didn't bat an eyelid in this one.
Tell you what, Pez, I've never watched the first quarter and wanted to change my tip fast enough. The performance that the GWS Giants put out in that first quarter, and how dominant Fremantle were in possessing the football, keeping it out of the hands of the Giants, but then again, the decision-making from the Giants and the skill error was ridiculous. They obviously kicked themselves out of that first quarter, and the moment they started missing some of those easy goals, their heads dropped, and they just let themselves out of the game. They literally might have jumped on the bus and head back to Cairns.
They might as well. They didn't chase. They didn't do anything.
Cairns, sorry, I meant Canberra.
Yeah, they can go to. They probably might as well go to Cairns.
Might as well go to Cairns, yeah.
If they're going to play like this, the Giants, after disappointingly losing to St Kilda in that first week in wet conditions, when they, could have sealed it in that fourth quarter, then we have Fremantle, who are depleted. They got their ruckman back in Darcy, but they're depleted. You've got a star-studded midfield, or do you? You actually
we
may
don't
not
even know anymore.
You may not. You've got names that are meant to be star-studded. What are you doing? I thought Toby Green was one man that could get them over the line. He couldn't do that over at Optus. Fremantle played that ground so well. They moved the ball through the middle of the ground and hit up their targets inside forward 50 with ease, and just had ping after ping after ping. Could have blown them out to 60 points if they wanted to at the end. They took the foot off the accelerator there at the end and let GWS come back into it a little bit. But Fremantle by 31 could have been 60, and GWS, you are in dire straits. I don't care what you put up on your walls at training this week. Leon Cameron, you're in trouble, mate.
He's in big trouble, and I spoke about this in the preseason show, and even though I did pick them to sort of bounce back in 8, I spoke about how they could be one of those teams that go 0-3, go 0-4, and they could potentially be looking at a coach sacking. I looked at the stats actually looking for the tackling stat because I thought, you know what, they just didn't seem to apply any pressure. And it was really interesting that the tackle stat for this was 48 all. But then I looked at the tackles inside 50, 6-2. Like, that is disgusting. Absolutely disgusting that they had 2 tackles inside 50. It's just not good enough. You're right. I think that they dropped their heads and they just gave up. I've never seen a team. And as I said, after that first quarter, I'm like, there is no chance in this world that this team is coming back, even though the scoreline up until the third quarter was still manageable.
They just didn't try. They've got no heart. I don't even know how you can inject anything into that side Sauce. It definitely needs a change at the top and a chain reaction, I'll say, because just clear out up the top there, get some new people in. You've got a list that's, manageable to try and compete with AFL clubs. I was really disappointed in GWS because I thought they could beat a depleted Fremantle. They didn't do it. But on the other side of the coin, Fremantle, very impressive with all those young guys over there. You had Schultz kick 3, Brayshaw kick 2, amazing goals. Kicked one early and then kicked one later in the game. Swikowski kicked 2, Taberner kicked 2 and marked the ball up the ground really strongly. Fife, he hit the scoreboard, but out with a concussion and will he be out next week because he got that big hit.
Well, he'll miss the protocol, so he'll miss next week against I can't remember who they're playing, but it's a game that they possibly, we definitely could have had him back for. But I think we definitely undersold Fremantle in that pairs. It wasn't just how disgusting that GWS were. Fremantle won the clearances 29-20. They won the inside 50s 58-42, and they dominated the contested ball 145-113. And you're right, they could have won this by 70, 80 points. They probably could have even blown it to 100 points. They had 21 behinds pairs, and a lot of those were very gettable. And it was disgusting that realistically GWS deserved to lose by 100 points on that effort, probably even more. But you're right, the young stars from Fremantle, and I'm going to tout them as stars because they haven't got any other stars playing for them next year with little McWalters out, and they've got Nat Fyfe missing next week. So some of those players are doing some really great stuff. Sean Darcy as the ruckman, he was an absolute highlight in that first half. He looked amazing in his return match.
Oh, just killed the Giants and gave Fremantle first look at the footy and just the Giants. I can't get over the names that they've got and this shithouse performance that they put up. If they played against Essendon on the weekend,
they would have lost.
Or North,
they probably would have lost.
I can't see them doing anything, and I don't know when to tip them again. GWS play against Melbourne next week at GWS. So you just don't know what's going to happen. Max Gawn seems like he's going to have another day out against them, and Fremantle go down without Fyfe to play Carlton. So Carlton really need to win.
Yeah, in Melbourne.
After going 0-2 as well. So that'll be tough for Fremantle, but can they impress again?
Hopefully David Mundy can bring his performance. He had 20 disposals in the first 5 minutes, it felt like. He ended up with 35, had 5 tackles and 6 clearances. He does not look like a 34-year-old man running around there. He looked like one of the young guns. He's another player.
People are trying to retire him for 3 years.
Yeah, well, he just seems to pop up, doesn't he? He just seems to have those games where I don't know where he'll get 30 disposals and he's absolutely dominant. So, if they can get a more consistent feed from him when you've got Fyfe in there, Walters, Adam Chera, he looks fantastic. He's an absolute find for them. They had a couple of other players that sort of stepped up. Caleb Sarong's continuing his form from last year. He had 22 disposals. He looked pretty good. But it's the tackling pressure pairs, like these players that we're talking about. Brayshaw had 6 tackles. Mundy had 5 tackles. You had...
Schultz had 6.
Yeah, Schultz had 6. Sarong had 4. Akers had 4. Like it's like that's what you need from these young guns. You need them to be getting tackles and applying that pressure. And especially when you're a defensive-minded team, all you need to do is then convert them when it goes forward.
Well, that's it. And if you play a team as poor as GWS at the moment, you're pretty happy with that. Sauce, that is the end of round 2. One thing we do need to talk about, I know you might wanted to avoid it, and I forgot about it throughout, is the lines that we picked throughout the week. So I'll just quickly go through that. Carlton, we both got that wrong, Sauce. We go to the Geelong-Brisbane. You picked Geelong, which was wrong. I picked Brisbane, which was correct. We both got the Sydney line. We both got the Port Adelaide line. We both lost on the Saints, Sauce. We both got the Suns. We both got the Tigers. And then I got the West Coast Eagles, who were within the 11.5. You missed out on the Bulldogs there, and we both missed out on GWS. So in round 2, I got 6 out of 9 in the lines. You got 4 out of 9. And that moves to a season total. I'm at 11. You're on 8, so you got a bit of catching up to do
I've
this
got
week.
a bit of catching up. It's disappointing because if we'd done actually the teams that won, those lines that I'm losing, the team that I've picked has won, so that's really disappointing. But that's why we went the bit more difficult route. It was too easy beating you every week like I was.
That's why we do the lines. You keep telling yourself that, and I can't believe if there's listeners that actually think that's going to happen. That's very strange.
All right, let's look at the stat sheet for 2021, Pez. Yeah, it's what is it? 8 to 11. So I'm only 3 behind. I think that you'll be able to catch me in the loser tip. Oh, but you're out of losing tipping, aren't you?
Out of lose
Out in
it.
sets.
Can't win your own competition. We know that. But pretty good banter on the show. Big in-depth analysis of round 2 Sauce and speaking about every single club. And that's what's really good about our show, Behind the Boundary. We do speak about every single club every single week. I've been Pez. Look forward to the next show. Peace out.
I'm still Sauce. We'll catch up next time, guys.